Parashat Ki Tavo begins with the mitzvah of Mikra Bikurim. The Torah says when the person brings his basket of the first fruits to the Beit HaMikdash, and he gives them to the Kohen, and then he has to make a declaration. The Torah says the following: "V'anita v'amarta lifnei Adonai Elohecha, Arami oved avi vayered Mitzrayma v'yagor sham yimtei me'at v'yish sham legoy gadol atzum v'rav." One must declare in front of God, a wandering Aramean was my father, and he went down to Egypt, and he lived there with a small group of people, and became a great nation, great and mighty. And then we read the story, Vayareh otanu HaMitzrim, the Mitzrim were cruel to us, and they Ve'anunu vayitnu alenu avodah kasha, and they oppressed us, and they put upon us a difficult labor. And then we have the story of Yitziat Mitzrayim, and Yitzhak el Adonai Elohei Avotenu, vayishma Adonai et kolenu, vayaret onenu v'et amalenu v'et lachatzenu. We called out to God, who saw our suffering, various descriptions of suffering. Vayotzienu Adonai miMitzrayim, He took us out of Egypt, biyad chazaka v'zorah nituya v'morah gadol v'otot v'mofetim. God took us out of Egypt with a strong hand and outreached arm, with great fear and great wonders and miracles. And He brought us to this place, in other words, to the Beit HaMikdash, to Eretz Yisrael. And He gave us this land flowing with milk and honey. This is a declaration that every person makes when they bring their first fruits to the Beit HaMikdash and celebrate their harvest. The opening passage, which I think the declaration is familiar to all of us because it's part of the Haggadah, it's part of the Pesach Haggadah. In fact, it's the backbone of the Haggadah. This description of the suffering in Egypt and all of that is the central text about which the whole Haggadah is constructed. The opening passage, which also appears in the Haggadah, Arami Oved Avi, is a very curious one. We all remember from the Haggadah how the Haggadah interprets what it means, Arami Oved Avi. Right? The Haggadah says the following: Tzeh ulemad, ma bikesh Lavan ha'arami lasot leYaakov Avinu, שפרעה לא גזר אלא על הזכרים, ולבן ביקש לעקור את הכל, שנאמר, ארמי עובד אבי, וירד מצרים, ויגור שם מפני מעט, ויהי שם לגוי גדול עצום ורב. Right? The Haggadah's midrash of this pasuk identifies the Arami with Lavan. Lavan is Yaakov's father-in-law, the father of Rachel, and who gave Rachel and Leah to Yaakov as his wives. And so Lavan wanted to destroy everything, says the Haggadah. It's not 100% clear exactly how. And then Yaakov fled from Lavan, eventually making it down to Egypt, and the beginning of the story of the settlement of the Jews in Egypt. Now, this identification of Lavan with the Arami is very difficult. It's very difficult, first of all, because the verb oved, right, doesn't mean destroy. There's a cognate of that which means destroy, abed, but the word oved means to be lost, to wander perhaps. And the Ibn Ezra already points out that the identification of the Arami with Lavan does not really make any sense, not only because of the verb, but also with the continuation of the verse. The verse continues, the subject of the verse is after Arami Oved Avi, Vayered Mitzrayma. In other words, who went down to Egypt? It sounds like, from the way the verse is constructed, that Lavan went down to Egypt. If the Arami went down to Egypt, then Lavan never went down to Egypt. In fact, the continuation of the story is the people of Am Yisrael, who were the descendants of this person who went down to Egypt. That certainly is not Lavan. So the Ibn Ezra suggests that the person is being described here, the Arami, is not Lavan, but rather it's Yaakov himself, the wandering Aramean, rather than the Aramean who sought to destroy my father. It's my father himself was a wandering Aramean, and he's the one who went down to Egypt. And that, of course, it works much better in terms of the integrity of the pasuk. That being said, the Ibn Ezra's suggestion has a huge problem. Yaakov wasn't an Aramean. In fact, in no way was he an Aramean. And not only that, and this I think is just part of what the Midrash is basing itself on, Lavan is the only person described as an Aramean in the whole Torah. So who is this Arami Oved described in the pasuk? What I would like to suggest is that the wandering Arami, the Arami Oved Avi, is deliberately obscure in the Torah. The Torah deliberately opens up the opportunity for the Midrash to suggest that it's Lavan, based on the idea that Lavan is the only Aramean around. Although it's clear that the Ibn Ezra is correct, that the only possible interpretation of who this person is one of our forefathers, Yaakov. Another interpretation perhaps is Avraham, who also came from Aram. But the idea, the pasuk, is being opened, is being deliberately obscured, is an attempt to create a certain situation which is dependent upon the continuation of the psukim. The idea is precisely that our history, our ancestry, is obscure. We come from no place. We come from obscurity. And the formulation of Am Yisrael became a people who called out to God in Egypt. And it was the suffering, the common suffering of Am Yisrael together as a people in Egypt, which is the founding notion from which our celebration begins. All of our celebration of having received the land and celebrating in the Beit HaMikdash on the successful harvest is founded on this idea that we were born in slavery. We were born as a people in slavery, and our common suffering is what created our identity. And only from there can we give our thanks to God for the success and our satisfaction on the fact that now we are in the land, and now we can bring our first fruits. And only from that perspective can we make that celebration. The Arami Oved Avi is deliberately obscure, I want to argue. It has to be interpreted, and that's what we do. It's what Jews do in general, we interpret. But the obscurity remains in order to point to the obscurity of our origins. We're not celebrating because we are the descendants of the high and the mighty. We come from nowhere. We come from obscurity, and we come from obscurity into slavery. And only from there, when we called out to God together, were we able to rise to the situation where we live in Eretz Yisrael and can celebrate the bringing of the first fruits. Shabbat Shalom.